to be a wonderful night. It's a great day for this little Dauphin Island school. And we have asked Jeff Collier to introduce our speaker in Collins. So if he will come up and do that, and then we're going to give it to Ann.
All right, we're going to do that. I'm going to try it without the microphone because everybody says I got a big mouth. But on behalf of the town council and on behalf of DIAC, I want to welcome everybody out tonight. Got a couple of council members here with me, both Ms. Shirley Robinson and Ms. Mary Thompson. I appreciate them being here. And before I introduce the speaker, I want to mention a couple of quick things about the partnership that the town put together with DIAC, and that's the Dauphin Island Heritage and Arts Council. If you haven't been to their facility behind Town Hall, you need to go do that. They run a great show there. Lots of fantastic local art that you can acquire. There's also a heritage gallery in there as well. If you notice, when you got here tonight, there was no fee to get in. But if you also notice, they've got things they'll sell you, like a t-shirt, or they even have a box for donations that are very well accepted and appreciated. So keep that in mind as you go. But the relationship and the partnership that we put together with DIAC is hopefully to save this particular building. The Mobile County School Board has made a decision to build a new replacement building for this aging building, historic building, that's 80 plus years old. And so when we heard that, we went to the school board and they gave us first right of refusal. So the town will take ownership of the building at the appropriate time. Right now it looks like it'll be maybe about a year before the new building is in place. So that gives the town and DIAC and that partnership and a number of volunteers a good opportunity to put together fundraisers, find a location, and all the other things that go along with making this work. The long-term goal is to take this building, put it in another yet-to-be-determined location on the island, and then repurpose it into a combination art and heritage gallery, which would simply be on a much larger scale than the one that's currently in place. So that's our mission. We think that that's a great opportunity for our community, not only for the short term, but for future generations as well. So any support that you can give, whether it's monetary or physical, we would be greatly appreciative. You can talk to either any of the council members, or I would really direct you more to the DIAC people themselves and say, get with them and tell them what you'd like to do. With that being said, I guess now we'll turn and head you in the direction of why you came here, and that's to hear tonight's speaker. I get the privilege of introducing her. First of all, she was born in 1932. I told her I wouldn't tell you how old she was, and that way any of the mathematically disinclined people wouldn't be able to figure it out, probably. So mathematically challenged people. So anyway, she was born in 1932 here on the island. She, in 22 years after that, in 1954, she married Mr. Clyde Collins, moved over to Grand Bay, where they spent about 45 years. Within that period of time, they had 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls. They ran a dairy farm called Jersey Queen for a number of years, where they produced a lot of milk for a lot of folks around the area. They also, later in the years, helped put together the Eddie's Pawn Shops that you see throughout the Mobile and surrounding areas. Ann has been very athletically inclined over the years, golf being one of those. She's a very good golfer. Played softball and other sports throughout her life. Her parents were Arnold and Mary Collier. She had one brother, my dad, Arnold Red Collier. And so, again, she was here a good bit of time prior to the bridge, and I know that's where a lot of the conversation is going to focus tonight. And you'll hear some storytelling and maybe even some telling of stories. I'm not sure. So, I always think back, being my dad's sister, people always used to tell me, said the only time they knew when my dad was lying is when his mouth was moved. So, not sure exactly what that means. But with that being said, I'll say one other quick thing. Ann still likes to do, she fishes. First of all, she moved back from Grand Bay about 15 years ago and resides here today. She enjoys fishing. She's an avid Atlanta Braves fan. And one of the best things in her life at this point is her pet dog, Opie. So I'm surprised he's not here with us tonight. I guess, or maybe he's home watching Gunsmoke. He likes it. With that being said, it's my true pleasure to introduce to you a wonderful lady, an island native, and my aunt, Ann Collins.
All of you for coming down. Mary Thompson told me I couldn't tell jokes, so I can't do that tonight.
Dirty jokes.
Oh, just a clean one, okay. Now, they wanted me to start off with my turtle story. It's not a story, it was true. When I was 6 years old, my dad knew when the turtles, that the full moon night, the turtles would come on the beach and lay. So the first time they would lay, Daddy would be sitting there waiting on them. He'd dig me a hole in the sand. I was 6. And when he heard the turtle coming, he kind of roused me up and said, "Hey, don't be quiet. We got a turtle coming on the beach." So when the turtle got there, my daddy would wake me up and we would watch the turtle dig the hole with his back feet. And the hole was so deep when we'd reach down to get it, my jaw was on the sand to see how many eggs he laid. Poor little thing, it was just like he was in labor. He'd give one grunt and sometimes 80 eggs would come out. So when he got through, he patted his nest around, made a little hill up, and this was kind of way away from the water edge. So then Daddy put me on the back of this old barnacle-looking turtle, and I grabbed where the head comes out, and I'd lay over his set, and he'd run to the water edge and pick me off when I got to the water edge. 21 days later, that same turtle, we figured it was the same turtle, would come within maybe 4 feet where she laid the last time. We was waiting on her. Then we'd dig turtle eggs, and everybody on Dolphin Island would separate eggs and give them some eggs, and they'd make cupcakes out of them, which we call turtle egg cupcakes. And that was an enjoyment for me as a child, and it'll stick with me the rest of my life. But now I'm going to take y'all one end of this island to the other end, if you don't mind. When the seagulls and the shellwater birds were laying on the beach, down where the first houses started here, was nothing but nests of little birds. They just have a little round sand pile that they dug out, lay their eggs, and then they'd fly off and come back in the evening. Well, Papa, my grandpa that lived with me, I had 2 grandpas living, but this one lived with me. And we thought the world of each other. I was his ears. He could not hear from the day I was born. So he read my lips. He'd say, "Annie, when you get to a nest that's got 2 eggs, you're allowed to pick up 1. 3, let them alone. 4 is no-no, because they've got birds already." Well, I disobeyed one time. We'd have a little can to put the bird eggs in, and when we got home, we'd boil them. They were just tiny little things like this with freckles like I got. And we'd boil the eggs. Guess who got the one that had the bird in it? My grandpa looked at me, he said, "You didn't listen, did you?" I said, "Papa, I forgot." So that's how we got turned, the bird eggs. Now 2 or 3 weeks later, they were hatching out. This was the prettiest sight you'd ever want to see in your life. These little birds would be hatching out in the white sand that have just a little hole with the hot sun just boiling down on them like little yellow chickens. And when you'd walk by them, the little mouths would fly open. But every one of those birds knew where they had laid those eggs, where they had left the birds, and they'd come right back to them. There would be hundreds at a time on the beach. And that's a beautiful thing to see. It's something that'll stick with you, and you'll always have it in your mind. Now, my grandpa, he kept a little, what we call a pulling skiff. In the wintertime, he would copper paint it, fix it up, and me and him, he showed me how to make a sail with him. I was 8 years old. And Daddy would buy him the stuff to do the sails out. He put a boom on the skiff. Then he would latch out a U-shape where the other one would go on the mast, so when the sail flew over, it couldn't come out. It would just pedal back and forth. So we had 2 little dogs, Chiwi and Junior Boy. They were my little dogs. When we said terrapin hunt, those dogs were on the bar of the boat. Papa would get an old yellow-looking, it's a, I don't know, kind of brown jug, and put a cedar stopper in it for our water. And you know what that tastes like, cedar. we'd go to Little Dolphin Island, we'd sail over there, and by the time before we could get an anchor out, those two dogs had hit the beach. So Papa, he couldn't hear, so he stayed with me most of the time. If I heard him bark, the cedars then was so thick you couldn't see through them, so was the pine trees that we don't have now. But as soon as I'd hear him bark, I'd pull Papa's sleeve and I'd say, over here, pointing over here, because he couldn't hear me. Go over there, and those two little dogs had found a terrapin apiece, if y'all know where a terrapin is. And they somehow, I guess they'd scratch them, and they were on their back when we got there. Papa always carried a sack with him. We'd pick up those. Some days we'd pick up 5 and 6 at a time on that one little stretch of land, Then we'd start out. I'd hear marsh hen. You could hear marsh hens holler. I told Papa, I said, bird over there. And he says, he just show me, he'd say, he point, show me. I go around this way. When you scare a marsh hen and they know where to go, they'll hide their heads in the marsh grass. So the first time he popped up, pop him with a stick. There was our dinner. We'd take them home, he'd clean them, we'd fry them, roll them in flour and fry them, and we'd eat them. Now the terrapins, he'd have a pen for them. So we'd have to keep them up at least 4 days to get the mud and the smell of the marsh grass out of them. But they were so good. They had, when Mom and them would have a big garden, we always had a big garden. The little new potatoes, the tiny little potatoes, we'd go dig them. Mama would stew those terrapins down. You could only use the legs, you couldn't use anything else. Put new potatoes in them with brown gravy and a cornbread. Now you would not eat till you eat that. Of course, we didn't know any other thing to eat. We couldn't run to the store every day, like we do now. My daddy had a boat by the name of Buddy Ann, and we'd go to Bolivar maybe twice a month in that boat. Take about 3 hours to drive from here over there. I was scared to death of rain and bad weather. I'd cry all the way over there and all the way back. And I asked Mom one day, why do you take me? I said, I'd rather stay home with Papa and go fishing or do something else. So we'd have 2 or 3 families would get on this boat, go over, get groceries, and come back home. We had no running water, no lights, no indoor toilets. We had a pitcher pump. And if you wanted to drink the water, make sure you use that pitcher pump 2 or 3 times so the spring frogs would be in your face. I guess it purified the water, I don't know. We rubbed clothes on an old washboard. But Mama had caught rainwater from the rain. We'd wash them, we'd hang on the clothesline, and they were clean again. This was a routine that was there about once or twice a week. Now, when the crabs were plentiful on the South Beach, Mom and I would get a number 3 wash tub. I guess y'all know what that is, a big wash tub. Daddy would tie us a hook in the side where I could pull it on the water edge. Mama scooped crabs, and she put them in that bucket. Well, we knew how many we could carry from there back to back to our house. Then we pulled them out of the water. We'd come back to the house. Mama made a crab jambalaya, which was out of this world. And not having nothing to keep the crabs with, we had to eat what we could eat and boil the rest for a day or so. So that was one of our commodities we had there. Now, on the beach, me and my grandpa walked the beach a lot. This island used to be 17 miles long. Now I don't know how it is because it's been cut through several times. But we enjoyed walking the beach. And, he couldn't hear nothing. One day we were going down to Fort Gaines, walking on the beach. I happened to hear this airplane shooting bullets. You could hear them bullets at target practice. I looked up and I showed Papa, I said, look up here. This one plane would drag a long thing down, shows down that way, and the other plane would shoot at it for target practice. Then another day we was going down that beach. We didn't know we had a ship out in the ocean that had got sunk. All these commodities come washing ashore on the beach. And one thing was Clem milk was the name of it. It had U.S. printed on it with Clem milk. We took that home and you could use it for coffee, for milk. You could take it and mix it with water and it was delicious. They had little bitty canisters like this with raisins in them. Anything that a soldier would have used for, survival, we found it. Papa always had a sack on his, we carried a corn sack. We filled that thing up till we couldn't carry it anymore and went home. Then we spread the word to the island people. They went over and got what they needed and what they could carry on. Then another time we was on down going to Fort Gaines. There was a cemetery sitting way back up on the hill. It had 5 soldiers' little crosses on it. And the fence then was about this high where the sand had built up so. Well, that hurricane after hurricane, we lost all of that. And years later, some of the shrimp boats was finding bones, skulls, and everything else in the throat. Probably never knew where they came from, but we knew where they came from. They came from that little cemetery where the soldiers were buried. We have walked through Fort Gaines, on top of Fort Gaines, me and Papa, and you could see where the dungeons, where they used to put the soldiers in, the goats would fall off the fort into the dungeons and stay there and rot because they couldn't get back out. So there was an artesian well at the fort. I don't know if Jess ever remembered it or not. It was a well about this big around, and somebody had a pipe in the ground and the water would just flow. We drank water out of that thing every time we made that trip. After the people come on the island, they capped it off. Why, I don't know, but it's where that trailer park is down there now. But things kept going on, and my grandpa, he was a good slingshot shooter. He made me and him both a slingshot. And he'd find somebody that had an old inner tube tied. That's what he used for the rubbers. And I'd see him cut the tongue out of his shoe for a basket. The only thing I ever shot was my big thumb. But he could shoot that thing for a distance of no distance at all and shoot a bird and he'd fall over just like that. Now we would go out in the woods. Sometimes we'd find an old piece of stove, iron stove. Take us a half a day the next day to crack up enough iron to go bird hunting again. Snakes, he could kill them with that. And we used to go around the alligator pond with my dogs, my little dogs. And he'd say, Annie, don't get them dogs too close to that pond. Them alligators will slap them in with their tail and you lose them. Well, I pay attention to that because I know it happens. So my grandpa was 67 years old when he died. We watched Dauphin Island Bay freeze over. It was down to 6 degrees. My daddy had a boat out by Postway and the ice went almost to his boat. Well, Papa decided he was going to walk on that ice. He did. But when he fell, he caught some oysters, caught him in the ribs, and later on he had cancer from that. So my brother came 5 years and 3 months late, 6 years and 3 months later than what I did. So when he came along, we had to kind of baby him and do things that we could do with him. When Mama got on the shrimp boat with my daddy, she'd shrimp, they'd catch oysters, and they'd catch fish. Now this is the part y'all probably won't believe, but it's true. We'd wait till a freeze come. We had cows, we had hogs, and we had 2 horses and some goats. Well, the old hog would get to the back gate and I couldn't get out. Every time I pushed it, she'd grunt and I'd squeal for daddy. Well, he'd come chase the hog away. Well, anyway, when a cold, cold winter night would be coming, he would go kill a hog. My part was, they put sacks on this hog, pour hot boiling water on it. And then when they took him over to cool down, I'd get in there and just pull hair right by the hands full. All right, they butchered that hog. They didn't cut it up that night because it was going to be real cold. It was hung up in a pine tree in our yard by a rocking tackle to dry out. The next day, Mama would get her barrels ready. They was like whiskey barrels, big wooden whiskey barrels. They cut up the pork, put the pork, a layer of salt, another layer of pork, and a layer of salt, then cover it up. In about 3 weeks, Mama would have to pour that brine off and start all over again. Mama never fished a lot. Well, they caught all these big mullet. They would catch, they would save, Daddy would clean them. Just leave the roe still in them. Put them in a salt barrel. Put more salt and brine just like we did the pork. Then when we wanted something to eat, we'd have to take them out that night and put them in water to get the salt out. Next morning, pour that off and put some more water on it. The fish could stand up like that in your hand. They were so stiff with salt. But we ate this, and why we're still here, I don't know. And the first part I got about the hog was the bladder. Papa got the bladder, cleaned it up, took a reed, blowed it up, and tied it up, put it in a tree to completely dry. That's the best ball you'll ever play with. But I never missed anything as long as I was here. I had plenty to do. And like my Uncle Peter, you know the little white house, the cake house, the cookie house right up here on the road by Ben Burger? She's got a restaurant there.
Bakery.
Bakery.
Lighthouse Bakery.
My daddy was raised in that house there. And Uncle Peter had an old wooden keg that he caught all the water off the house with. Well, when I went by that house, I couldn't stop. I had to have a drink out of that thing, not knowing all that bird leaves was in that barrel. He had an old faucet on it. You had a dipper there. You'd dip some water in that, and you'd see the wiggle tails just to go on. I'd pour most of them out, and couldn't get them all out and drink them. So from there, I'd go up to my grandma's. It was time for her to wash clothes in an old boil pot. Then she wanted me to help her kill a chicken one day. Well, that didn't work out too good either. I had the chicken by the head and stretched its legs out. When she come down with that hatchet, I shut my eyes and cut the bill off the chicken. We chased the chicken down, we got him, and Grandma finally chopped his head off. She'd hang them on a clothesline with a clothespin so they would bleed out. And then she'd clean them, and then that's what she did to chicken. She taught me to quilt when I was 9 years old. In her house in the living room, they had quilting rods. She'd take that old quilt and roll it up and do some shell stitching in it with chalk. And she taught me how to quilt. When we get through and tied, we'd roll on up to the top of the house and there it stayed again until we wanted it again. My grandma was a wonderful old woman, but she was a little hard-headed sometimes. She could make light bread and cook an old cabbage to make your brains try to just suck your brains out of your head. She raised 13 children, is what she had. And of course, I had to ask her what she do in her spare time. That didn't go over too well. She said, "You nasty thing, you." So we just went around the island and back and forth. But what got me so bad was going to Ballabastry in that boat. I couldn't take that. So finally, Mama started leaving me home. Now for Christmas, Easter, we didn't have ham for dinner like everybody has here now, because we couldn't buy it and preserve it long enough. We'd have duck and goose. That was our Christmas dinner. And Mama would make some kind of other things that go with it, some kind of beans or something. We enjoyed that. We didn't know any better. Why should we want anything anymore? So, can you hear it? Thirsty.
That thing is.
Got the little neck like that chicken head. Now we used to ride in an airplane, a little Cub. It was an Army Cub. But this guy would come over and there's 3 girls. He would take up one at a time, Bishop. And take us over the Dauphin Island. You could see every little cow trail from up there in the air that was down there. And he went over my house one time. He says, "Do you recognize that?" I said, "No." He said, "That's where you live." One day, Bishop didn't quite make it. He come in and clipped the oak tree down before he got us and broke the wing off. Now, when rodeo come up, we walked from the old subdivision to the port. That's where they had the first rodeo. Just to get a dill pickle and one of them old sneaking fish they cooked. Horrible, but we did. Now they got the rodeo close to me. I live about 2 blocks from it. I don't even go. And back then it was something for us to do, the young kid. I learned to jitterbug at 12 years old. Do y'all know what that is? Now I can't raise my legs up. But Dr. Croner, she come over. That was Pete Croner's a guy, a cousin of mine's wife. She come over and she started this dance. We all went to the dance, Mom and Daddy and all those, because there was nothing but kids. I had an uncle that played the violin, an uncle that played the mandolin and the accordion, and 2 other guys that played guitars. One night Daddy slipped around and this boy's foot was going like this. Well, he held it down. He said, "Oh, Mr. Arnold, don't do that. I can't pick a guitar if you go hold my foot." But we enjoyed life. I've never wished I could go back to anything else. Then I did go to the Little Red Schoolhouse too. And as I got older, why they ever moved it here, I don't know. But we had an old pitcher pump there, and if you push the water, sometimes you let the handle go and it'll pop up and hit you in the head. I guess it was a pressure from it. We had outdoor toilets there too, no lights. My job at my house was to get up every day, wash the globes on an old kerosene light, and see that it had kerosene in it. That was one of my jobs. My daddy said one day, I was looking at him, I was about 4 or 5. He was sitting without his undershirt down, and I kept picking at the hair on his chest. I said, "Daddy, I want some hair like that." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what you can do. You eat a lot of onions, and you'll grow hair." So he missed me one day. I was out in the garden pulling up his scallions, eating them one at a time, and cheers. He said, "Would roll it down my cheeks." He come pick me up. He said, "Baby, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm wanting some hair. You told me if I ate onions, I'd get hair." He kissed me on the cheek. It was just like yesterday. Put me on his shoulder, walked me in the house. He said, "Baby, you'll never get hair on your chest because you're a little girl." That liked to kill me. All my dreams was gone. Then when we had Christmas, we had Easter. We never got a whole lot of things like kids get now. We got one thing. I remember getting a metal doll one time this long. And then Mom would buy us clothes and shoes. See, I was born in a depression. At times we had tickets to get gasoline that was ratcheted in. You had a ticket for sugar, one ticket for shoes one time, one month. So we had things, but we didn't have what we wanted. We got what we needed. Like Christmas Day, I told you we had turkey, birds, wild birds. Then at Easter, we didn't have dye. So Mama would take some material that was fading, cover the eggs up and boil them. Now if the eggs cracked during this procedure, we couldn't eat them because it was poison, the dye that was in it. And if you ever need a gold egg, take your onion peelings, cover it up with that and boil it, and you'll have a pretty gold egg. But now for Christmas, I never knew whether I was going to have a cedar limb, a pine tree, or any other kind of tree. One day Daddy brought home a cypress tree, not a sprig of nothing on it but limbs. So we always got a book from Spiegel when I was a kid, because we used to take it to the outdoor two-holder toilet with me. We cut up little strips to make chains. Mama made some paste from flour and water. We pasted those things together, let them dry, put them on this tree. And these little old balls out here, these, I can't think of the name of it, there's a tree out here. Yeah. No, it's not sweet gum, what is it? It's got big leaves. Sycamore tree. They'd have those little star things that would hang down. We'd get those, maybe wrap them up in a piece of paper and do different things with them, hang them on our tree. Put those chains on there. And then Mama would have us quilting a quilt. The old cotton wasn't white then. It was grayish brown. So she got some of that, we put it on each limb of that tree with no branches, just branches is all it was. And decorated, it was as pretty as anything you could see, to us. But there was things I didn't have, but I never wanted for nothing. I was born in the middle of the Depression. And we always had plenty of food to eat because Mom and Daddy was fish, shrimp, and oyster. We had one cow. You could not save the milk over 2 days unless you boil the milk because there's no way to preserve it. We didn't have the commodities we got now. An old outdoor toilet. I hated to go out there in the winter time because it was so cold. But I did. But anyway, these things happen. I will always remember it till I die, which probably won't be too much longer. I'm almost 82. And you can't keep people alive that's got everything wrong with them, just about. But anyway, we would go, me and Papa went all over this island. We walked One day, a guy off of a boat, old Johnny Norval, off of a towboat, drowned it in a bad storm. Me and Papa found him down the beach. Before I knew it, Papa had a stick digging around under his eyes, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I want to see if the crabs are gonna eat his eyes out." So I don't know, didn't know right then if I want any more crabs or not. But I love my grandpa, and I think he loved me, but I think he wished I would have been a boy. And that was almost impossible. But anyway, we snake hunt, crack iron all day long when he'd go snake hunting. We'd go out in the marsh, we'd get birds. I've seen about eat everything but an old crow, a buzzard, and a blackbird. I have. We'd have to parball a lot of them. Well, one day he wanted me to make him some bread. I was 10 years old. Mama didn't tell me it was plain flour, and I used water. So we mixed it up. He wanted to gall it, like he called it, in an iron skillet. You take that, you flatten it down one side, and you flip it to the other side. Well, his mouth was watering for that bread, but he didn't have no teeth. So when I give it to him, he looked at me, give it a pull, he couldn't chew it. He said, "Good God, I could knock a bull down 50 yards off." So that ended the bread until I asked Mama what I had to do. So I don't know what else y'all want to hear. I can go on and on and on, but I won't.
We'll give her a slight break, but let's give her a hand so far. Why don't we just let you raise your hand and let you ask some questions, and maybe you can take us in an area that maybe she hasn't touched on, or one you'd like to go back and follow up on. So let's do that for a few minutes, if you will. Anybody have any questions or comments? Come on now, we need you
They
to...
probably want to know how we survived. Barely.
All right, well, I think, that Liz?
Yeah.
All right.
What did you do when a hurricane came to Dauphin?
We never left this island. The house that we used to go to was right across from the Catholic church, an old house, white house with a red roof on it. That was my grandma's. That was the highest point on Dauphin Island. And Daddy'd get his little coffee can with his money in it, and we'd get a sandwich or two, and we'd go up there and stay till it was over. Our house and a guy named Henry Lambie's house are the only two houses that was around here. But we never lost anything in a hurricane. We might get water in the bottom of it or something, but that's it. And I lived right down the road from where Grandma's house was. She had 13 children. How she put them in a two-bedroom house, I don't know. But she did. She had 2 bedrooms, and then she had a huge living room, which was mattress to mattress at nighttime. This wasn't mattress, it was a quilt to quilt. And of all things, I had to stay up there a lot of times. I was so happy with a big family, I only had my brother. My brother got up big enough to go with us. He got a little BB gun. Well, our next door neighbor was an old man, Mr. Frank Kaya, and between our house and his house, there was that 7 sister running rows all over the fence. My buddy was going to shoot some lizards. He shot Mr. Frank in the backside. He got up cursing and raising sand, and I run in the house. I was scared. My buddy ran in the house. We had to go apologize to that old man. He was a man, he would watch television, well, radio, not television. When they started that opera, he said, "I'll fix you, I'll turn you off." By the way, we had one radio battery. We was not allowed to play that. Daddy watched the news on the battery, and the ball game come on. My grandpa couldn't hear, so he'd sit like she's sitting there, and we'd all get on the floor. And Daddy said, 1 strike, 2 strike, and said he's running fast. And Papa jumps up. Did he make it? Did he make it? Mom said he's out. He watched Daddy though, because he couldn't hear. He watched my daddy and everything. We talked to my grandpa. He could understand a lot of things that I told him by reading my lips. Then when I got to playing golf, Smith, remember her? Bakery Smith? I started talking to Carolyn, and she said she couldn't talk. And she'd say, "Did you do that?" I said, "Watch my lips." I talked to my grandpa for years, And then she understood what I was saying. She was deaf too. She had her brother that way too, didn't she? But is there anything else y'all want to ask me? I'll think of something else to tell you in a few minutes.
Look, he's got some.
Were there cowboys?
No, baby. I had two horses, and I got on my little horse, the smallest horse one day, and out yard, the house had a lean-to. And he crawled up on that horse, and here I am screaming with a tin across my neck. Papa couldn't hear. My brother was well, so he run and got out. So that was my horse.
So they were cowgirls. Randy?
What was school like?
School was fine. I went over here 7 years, I think we had as a little redhead schoolhouse. But now if kids now had to go to school the way I had to go to school, my daddy Orchard, he'd pick me up, take me to Cedar Point on Sundays. He'd take me to Bottle Battery, which I was with my aunt. He boarded me out with my aunt. Friday, he'd be back at Cedar Point, and we'd go back home on a boat. I didn't like that, but I had to do it. So now if you don't have 2 or 3 cars in the carport, they don't want to go nowhere. We didn't have one. Later on, I graduated at 16. Daddy, I was able to get a car. Daddy gave me a little car. We drive down there after school, get on the boat, and when he got back, he didn't have to put me back over there. I'd just go on myself by the car. But life was easy. It wasn't hard. I don't miss a thing. If I had to do it again, I'd do it all over again. We'd go on the beach, and Papa would find a nest of turtle eggs. He'd poke a hole till he found one that would give through. We dig them up. Now, if the turtle egg was full or plump, you let them alone. They got turtles in them. If they had the little dimple in them, they were fresh. And that's how we went. But I know I'm missing something. Yes, ma'am.
Linda?
Did you eat turtle eggs
Yes.
raw?
No, ma'am. We boiled them. The white will never get cooked. You boil a turtle egg and use the yolk. And that's the way we ate those. We didn't know the difference. It wasn't chicken eggs. We had chickens, but we didn't know the difference.
Okay, go ahead.
How did your family end up here on Dauphin?
All my family was born and raised here. You had to watch out who you was going with because you might marry a cousin. My grandfather and all his people on Horn Island, I think they started. There was houses on Horn Island. And then as things went on, they all moved to this side of the island. My grandpa told me he helped with the jetty rocks for 25 cents a day from sun up to sundown. Now, people nowadays wouldn't even walk out the back door for 25 cents, but that's what he had to live on. We used to go get a slab of bacon, a whole slab of bacon for $1.25. Now you can't get a half a pound for that. But it was bacon that you had to rind on and you had to cut it up. See, when we had the cow, we milked the cow, fresh cow. We milked milk, but we couldn't save it. Mama had to boil it to save it. We boiled it and it would last you a couple days. I didn't miss not having ice. I didn't miss not having electricity. The only thing I hated was to go outside in the wintertime to that toilet hole out there. It was cold. But my papa, he couldn't hear, but we made him understand. He made everything, rake scales on down. He could build you a house in his head, never had a day of school, to the last plank. He was a smart man on building. He built anything. He built my high chair when I was a baby. I still got that, at least my daughter's got it. He built a rocky horse for me and Daddy painted it just like he'd buy in the store. He built my crib out of 2x4s and she still got that. All 6 of my kids use that crib. You didn't know that?
Anybody else? I want to ask about, about a pig iron.
Oh, Lord.
I started to bring it, but I don't know if I can pick it up.
It was a 50-pound pig iron. I had a cousin that was 9 months older than me. Whatever he did, my daddy figured I had to do it. So this pig iron had a hole through it with a little rope through it, and he tied another rope. He'd make it, put it across your neck. Now, Houston, pick this up, you pick it up. I'd get on my knees, push up. He said, come on, you can't let him be outdo you. So up I'd come. Now today I've got knots all the way down the back of my spine. I got all my vertebrae, as they said, like a Rocky Mountain goat, and that's caused it, I guess. But my daddy would go along with his middle finger and hook it that thing and pick it up out and put it back down, 50 pounds. You still got that, Eddie?
It's in my yard at home, so if anybody wants to come try it, come.
I was gonna have you, tell them about Papa Jim and your grandfather Jim and where he got his house through the archdiocese.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
That Papa, he would sit on the porch and blow smoke through his whiskers,
And
and
that's
if
all
it
he
didn't
did.
come out right, I knew he was coming with a lie. The other grandpa was with me from the time I was born, and that's where I got the name of Annie, was his wife that died when his kids were all little.
Okay.
So he kept all the kids instead of separating them. And a girl over at one of the aunts over at Bala Baptistry took them all except Daddy, and he was raised up in that White House. But
Okay.
if I can answer, yes, sir.
The soldiers that you said washed away in the storm, were they like Civil War? Or?
They were over here stationed on this side, that down at Fort Gaines. My grandma said that they was there all her life. In fact, she had army doctors when she had these babies. That's what waited on her. And some of them had died, and they buried them up on that sand hill, which was way up then, and it just washed away because those jetties wasn't even. They was in the water, but all that sand that's moved out of those jetties has washed away. That's the ones he told me he worked so hard to put out.
Do you recall when the lighthouse was connected to the island? Did that happen when you lived, or was it?
It was probably, but I was so little I didn't remember with that. But I knew there was a building on the lighthouse and somebody taking it off and built a house with it. So, but when the oil company bored that hole underground, Little Dauphin Island's gonna be gone. That one out there by the lighthouse. But we fished, we oystered, but you had to eat everything. Like if Daddy and them caught oysters, when we opened them, we had to eat them that night because we couldn't preserve them. Now this meat we had in salt would last for the longest. But that's the way we went. Daddy had a cast net and he caught the mullet. When we wanted something to eat at supper, they'd go fishing about sundown, almost sundown, and I'd sit in the back of the boat. That was before my brother was born. One day I had a toothache so bad I couldn't stand it. Daddy chewed apples chewing tobacco. He said, told Mama, he said, "Oh, stop the boat." Mary says, "I'm gonna go back and give that kid a piece of chewing tobacco." He gave me a chew tobacco. I went to chewing and I went to vomiting. I don't know what I did with this toothache. I lost the toothache. My daddy was a man that whatever my first cousin did, I had to do. He thought I was a boy. But my brother come along and he wouldn't leave the island unless he wouldn't tell Mama. It didn't make no difference to me. I was going anyway. But my brother, I don't know if any of you knew Red at the golf course. He was a greenskeeper. He was a fine man. There was nobody would come on this island that didn't know him. And when I was a kid, nobody stopped on this island that we wasn't finding out within an hour why they were here, what they were there for. We had one street over here, and that was called 15th Street. That's the main street now, but it's not called that anymore. So my husband was, he was watching the boat out there for the bridge. He was a caretaker out there on one of the barges in '54. When the first hurricane came along, it took the bridge away. Then we got a new one. But even back then, we'd have to catch that old ferry going back and forth and go to mainland, get in our car and go home. We lived at Grand Bay. We milked cows for a living. And that, when you heard the cows at nighttime, if you didn't hear the chains rattle, you may as well get up. They're out. Many a night I've got up in my nightgown, my housecoat slipped down in the dairy patch or any kind of thing else, you know, to get them back in the yard. Had electricity later on. We had 3 milkers. And my job was to catch the cow's tail, pin it to the stanchion, so she wouldn't wrap you aside the head before we get the milk in time. Now that was life. I see my TV, my air conditioner man made it.
Let me ask you a question since you done pointed me out. Preston used to tell me that the road went behind, between where we live and his house, and the road was a dirt road down through there, and that used to be the old trail. Do you remember walking on that road?
I'm walking on that one, and the one in front of your house down this blacktop was dirt and oyster shells, because I jumped out of a Jeep after I got older, we had got a Jeep, and while the Jeep was running, I was smart, I was going to jump off the Jeep. Some kind of bone marrow came out of my knee, and I had a doctor that was with us that weekend. He said, you'll have trouble with that knee the rest of your life, and he wouldn't tell no lie. I've got both of them eyes bone to bone and can't get them operated. Anybody want to give up a knee? I used to love to play golf, but that's out now.
Has there ever been a jubilee on the island?
We were fishing about 4 years ago out on my wharf. I got an underwater light, and you could hear fish coming, rowing. I've never seen a jubilee, but I figured that's what it was. The white trout were just coming in so fast, over top each other. The lady next door took pictures of this, and we caught 110 in no time flat. I've never seen them like that before, or again. Since BB got a hold to us, I don't see fish, period. I was catching 5-gallon buckets of fish at night. I caught 2 last night and 2 catfish. They got me. Okay, anybody else want to ask?
Anybody else? Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What kind of animals like wild animals did y'all have up here?
We didn't have wild animals. We had cows, we had horses, we had goats, and we had hogs. And I split to where we could claim them was 2 splits in each ear. That's another thing I wanted to tell y'all about. The cows would end up on the end of the West Point down there. My daddy and 6 people, they would go down in the boat, and half of the men would get out and drive up the cattle, and they had a big pen they had built out of pine sapling. Put them in the pen. There'd be 5 or 6 baby calves. You wouldn't know who's what. Papa would say, Annie, just sit here and watch a while. They'll find their mama. And when they found out what calf wanted the mama, then you knew it was yours. You marked his ears, put some pine gum on him, and let him go. We had a dipping bat over here. Some of the cows would come in with warts hanging all over their eyes. And they had a dipping bat by my Uncle Ramsey way up the road. They run those cows in a solution. I don't know what they use. But they'd go down in that dipping bat and come back out. Well, before we put them back out and let them go down the beach, they were almost gone. But mosquitoes will make warts. And then Uncle Ramsey would kill a beef. I'm getting off of my subject of growing up, but I remember it all. He'd kill a beef, but before he did that, my mother's sister was married to his son. She'd go around and get orders off of this meat. Who wanted this, who wanted that. So when he butchered the beef, they all come out what they had asked for, and they were left with soup bones sometimes. But this happened about twice a year. We had movie here once in a while by an old dino thing, old Custer's Last Stand, The Shatter, The Hand. But everybody went to it because there was nothing else over here to do. And at 9 o'clock, I had to be in the house. Many a night I have laid there in my bed, the hot so hot because our house wasn't ventilated to the wind to go through, with a piece of pasteboard, me and Mom and Daddy both. We'd fan till we'd fall off to sleep. Sometimes you'd wake up and think you was drowning with the water in your neck. That was tough. And we swam in the summertime after school. We'd go over to the South Beach, several of us, and we wouldn't swim, and it was playing tag, and I always was a tagger because I couldn't go fast enough. But we never did see a shark. Never did see an animal or no kind of fish or no kind of.
Lady back here, yes, ma'am.
I apologize, I'm not from here, but could you tell me how you feel about the changes on the island?
I didn't like them. You can ask Mary what I told her one day, and I felt embarrassed about it afterwards. They wanted to put a toll on my bridge. My mother was dying with cancer. I'd come over here every day to take care of, my brother would take care of it at night. Mary said, we're gonna put a toll on that bridge. I looked at her, I said, Mary, you can't do that. I've got to see my mother. I've got to take care of her. She said, well, we don't want all them riffraffs over here. I said, you know, we thought that about you when you came over here. She never said no about a toll. I've played a many a game with her of golf, and I enjoyed it over here. The golf course was wonderful then, and now it's nothing but weeds. I need it to be condos. What I'm wondering about, why put condos on an old golf course when you got nothing to do for the people? Nothing. We had a big rope. We had a rope come off of a boat about this big. One of the boys that got up in a pine tree and tied this rope off, and it had a huge knot. We'd jump on that knot and swing all the way around in palmettos and bang down in that sand. Then the boys would cut us off a palmetto and would hold them here and scoot down. You get up, your panties was full of sand, but you enjoyed it. I mean, there was nothing else to do. But I used to love the dance when I was little, and my daddy and my mama did too. So when you went to a little dance, it was in the store by kerosene lights.